to roll. Everything has been set up. Let's get the chat going. Let's get it started. Jed,
Welcome.
welcome. It's a pleasure to finally get this going. I know we've been talking about it for a while.
Man, it's like every 2 weeks somebody would be like, you know who you need to connect with? I'm like, don't even say it.
Not
Don't
even
even say it.
saying,
Yeah.
They're like, yo, you know Jed? I was like, yeah, just my guy.
we good. Don't
Yeah,
worry. Don't worry
we
about
good.
that.
We've been tapped in.
But man, that's what I was talking to somebody yesterday about this and what we're trying to do. And it's like, very few people do I get to connect my three passions about the sports background, the entrepreneurial spirit with an intention around finances and being able to handle it. And it's like, dude, we do have a very common set of passions and interests in how we're going to help people.
Yeah, so let's tell the viewers what we got in store. Obviously, this is the first of many things that we got lined up, but let's tell them about bank shots.
Bank shots. First off, tip of the cap to the creative genius of the title. And what we want to discuss with people is, as athletes who are putting on our business lens, putting on our financial lens, how do we see the game evolving? Not just our individual sports, but truly holistically, the playing field of collegiate and professional sports is evolving on a daily basis. With it, the athlete that is involved in it is changing. And I think that's where you and I just kind of unite and connect and say, man, let's discuss some of the news that is breaking and some of the decisions the modern day athlete has to face that, nobody's had to answer in the past.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. So essentially, bank shots, as Jed alluded to, is the news and moves of the modern athlete. Obviously, we both have a history in professional sports, and we just want to give, the news stories that you hear about, give an honest take, not only from a professional athlete side, but personal finance, money management. Obviously, Jed's a financial educator, CFP, all that. So we just want to give you guys a different lens on what you guys are looking at and really dive into it. So Jed, give us some context to your story before we get into these topics, and then I'll share some of how I grew up and my story as well.
So my journey began while I was playing in the National Football League. A documentary called Broke came out. It was an ESPN documentary, and it really humbled me. I was a no-name player. I was an undrafted guy. I survived and found success for 7 years, which kind of broke the odds in my favor. But what I quickly realized was my relationship with money was not going to allow me to capture what I would consider the true professional dream. And in many senses, the professional athlete dream and the American dream is kind of broken. Why? Because we line up 100 professional athletes who are former athletes, and only a minority of them have captured what that opportunity really was. So as an undrafted guy getting cut a dozen times, I went out and I sought knowledge, and I went down the personal finance line in Borders bookstores. I had a mentor challenge me to get my CFP, which I started studying for each offseason during my NFL days. And that took me down a journey where I started answering questions of not just guys in the locker room, but my highly educated brothers, friends, people in general were starting to say, if you know anything about money, you're far ahead of where I am. So it really put a light bulb in my head of which direction I wanted to go. And today I'm very proud to say my business in core is around empowering people around how to use money and also how to just create behaviors of success, both financially and professionally. And so that's kind of where we align today is looking at the athlete and saying, if the dream is not to walk across the stage as a rookie, it is to walk out of a locker room as a veteran, having some money and memories to show for it. How can I help you obtain at least one of those? And so that's where I am. And you get to juggle a few different things being still a current athlete.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why we gel so well, because I feel like we have the same motivation. For me, it was the 30 for 30 Broke documentary that did it for me as well, where it's like, okay, soccer, we don't get compensated nearly as much as, the four major sports. but how can I maximize my career, my resources, my capital to avoid the situations that were exemplified in the Broke documentary. So for me, after that, like a spark was, ignited, and I wanted to like look for athletes that were sort of a roadmap. And what I kept finding were athletes that were anomalies, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, Tom Brady, or more athletes that were more of the broke model. So for me, it was a personal journey, like just genuinely curious about how I can use athletes as examples to live a frugal athlete lifestyle. And then,
And I gotta throw in one more, because if we're talking about the modern day athlete, I think we have to start by mentioning that series of guys you looked up to. Michael Jordan changed the game.
oh, yeah,
When he became the personalized brand, and that's how he became the true billionaire. Like, that to me was the evolution. Like, that was the pivotal switch of like, oh snap! Like, there's a whole business side of this thing beyond just how good you were. Sure, he was amazing on the court, but that side of it is really what intrigued both of us. Is how do you build that up, even if you're not a Michael Jordan?
exactly. And if you're not familiar with Michael Jordan, I don't know how you wouldn't be. Make sure you check out his documentary. There's a lot of business lessons, brand lessons in there as well. To have us 20 years later after he's retired to even still be talking about him in this fashion, outside of what he did on the court. So to your point, that's a great example. He was like kind of the first domino effect. Obviously, there's been many athletes before him, but he's the one that kind of shifted the whole narrative.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I want to ask you, because you are facing this dilemma. This is the discussion point that we have not been able to move past for the last 5 months, because it is so captivating, and it is humbling to realize how big it's become. But this idea of continuing down your professional career, measuring the risk and the reward of not just going out onto the field, but going in the building, going around your teammates. When they first approached you and said, Amobi, we're going to get back at it, how did you start to think through that process?
For me, to be honest, it was like there's no chance. Like there's no chance. Like it's not, people were talking, but nothing's really gonna happen, because like the cases had been spiking. There really was no answer to it. So I was in the mindset of like, okay, I mean, if we come back, we'll come back, but that's not gonna happen. So then when it actually did, it's like, okay, what safety precautions are being put in place to make sure that athletes are, safe? And not only the athletes, but there's other key stakeholders at play here, like the employees, the front office, the medical staff, the business staff, the business side of operations. Everyone, there's more people than just the athletes that are involved. So for me, it was like, okay, this is a big risk, but if they can make it work, they can make it work. But yeah, and it's still going on. Like even like to this day, we've had to postpone some of our games because of some COVID cases. So it's like an ongoing situation. There's no one way to do it. I feel like a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of key leaders are still figuring it out as they go, and that's kind of scary. And to not know, it's a little weird.
And let me ask you this, because when I looked at it, I tried to put like my hat on, and again, I'm a football guy, and that's why I'm astounded by how many football players are opting out. But you mentioned if the money is right, if the business's model is working, we should get out there and go. Do you see a difference between that predicament on the professional level and that conversation on the collegiate level?
Oh, most definitely, because collegiate, you're still going to school. So it's like, are they gonna not go to school and play, or so it's like you can't you can't make me play, and then there's no school involved. Like my fellow classmates don't have to be here. So then it's like, okay, now what you guys don't want to admit, like we are employees, and you got to pay us as such. So I mean, let's backtrack though. We got to get into the story.
Yes.
Obviously athletes. There's a lot of athletes saying no to not playing through this COVID situation, opting out. Break down some of the details. I know you did some research on this,
Mhm.
involving, what it means to opt out, why some athletes are opting out, and then cover that.
So I approach it with, kind of how we attack problems is what lens do I want to look at first? The first one is my mindset. If I am going into a season, if I'm going into a practice, a game, with anything, with any kind of hesitation, with any mental capacity that I'm not fully committed, I'm not 100% in, any field, especially at the professional level, that you step on and you're not going 100%, you are immediately at risk and prone to more injury. And I fear a lot of people, and the NBA talked a lot about this, was one, are you in shape? But then two, are you mentally prepared to go through this grind? And that was one of the first questions I had for myself if I were to be broached with this subject is, would I be fully committed? And then it moves into from a mindset to a discipline. And it does revolve around that training. Like, how have I been preparing? Have I been doing the same things that I would have done each and every year to get ready to go in and compete? I got to talk to a few NFL players who were in their cities, could not go to their facility, and were literally driving around looking for fields to just go run and condition and get out and move around on. And had they been doing that in their hometowns, not as much as you would think. And if those are the guys who are the self-driven, self-motivated ones who are out there, I got to believe there's a lot of guys who haven't even been out on a field and run like that. So when I began to run through these things as an athlete, I had a very, very short window, and I started to look at what is the risk of losing one of those precious, precious years versus what is the risk of going in and actually fighting the virus at hand. And so that is kind of where I began to measure it. But for me personally, it was the understanding that I don't have leverage. If I got replaced, I wasn't getting back in the door. I wasn't going to let a factor outside of my own play take away my dream and my opportunity. So I kind of went through a thought experiment, and I landed in the same boat as you. As if the phone rings, I was going to pick it up and go.
I think that's a big thing you pointed out, the leverage piece, because if you look at the athletes that decided to opt out, for example, baseball, David Price, football, Marcus Goodwin just announced, obviously he's dealt with loss in his family already. So that played a role. But there's other athletes, I had a name, Laurent Devaney Tardif from Kansas City. These are all athletes that have leverage, whether it's, they have financial backing or financial stability, or, they have high stature where they don't have to worry about someone taking their spot, or, they have other things in their career or passions that they can easily pursue. So let's dive into that a little bit.
So that gets into contract discussion of right now, if you have a contract that says you're scheduled to make $3, $4, $5 million this year, you put that in jeopardy by saying I'm ready to play. That is a very overlooked side of what the decision factor here is. A lot of the scenario B, C, D, precautions that the NFL at least is planning, and I'm sure it's different in every sport, but it's saying if you play week 1, your contract is valid. If you opt out, your contract is void, and it tolls, which is a fun little term, but tolls to next year. So if I was going to make $4 million this year, I opt out, I get my $4 million contract pushed out 1 year. So you look at that, and as a financial measurement, that is significant in the idea that if we go to a single game, my contract can go from $3 million to $300,000. That is, I can't even fathom that. Now you get the accrued and the benefits and things like that, but from a financial perspective of the contract, this is one of the first times athletes are being forced into a business decision saying, beyond your performance, beyond your play, that is within your control to some degree. This is outside of your control. Are you willing to bet on something that is outside of your control? And as you mentioned, there are starters who have the leverage to be able to say, I believe my job will be there next year. I'll see you guys next year.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And when people look at it from the outside, it's not just the health risk at play. And I think it's important that we talk about that, which you have greatly. It's just there's more than meets the eye, that goes on in these contracts. And when you have your family you have to take care of, your health, you're trying to play into the future of where your career might go, depending on if you play versus if you don't, how coaches are going to perceive you. A lot's at stake. And I think it's important that we pointed that out, the risk and first reward of playing through COVID.
And it's a daily awakening of what is the new research telling you? What are the new factors? You see the Marlins just yesterday get shut down. Yourself, games have gotten postponed. And you look at this and say, is this going to get better or worse over the next 6 weeks? I personally think it's a tragedy that collegiate sports has not laid down the hammer and said, there will be no fall sports. For this point alone, we have for 20 years been fighting the idea that we are not student athletes, we are athlete students. Mm-hmm. And for an athletic director for a conference to admittedly say it is unsafe for our students to go out and do this, but we're still going to do it, that is putting people under the profit. That is looking at capitalism and saying this is more important than the health of the young people that are coming to my university, not just to be athletes, but to also be successful human beings. It baffles me that we're still having this debate and this conversation. And that measures into the risk reward too, because collegiate athletes aren't even getting a contract or getting a payment. And as you mentioned, it is forcing the conversation of these are employees. I also want to point out, because this is just such an interesting facet of the conversation. Again, this is going on in baseball. I got to talk to a baseball announcer today who's already kind of uneasy about where the season is going. The NHL, the NBA have neat bubble lines. Much more confident. NBA, there's 200 guys. NHL, it's Canada, so they can protect themselves. But as far as the NFL opt-out, we were talking about how it is a smarter play for the guys with the leverage. Yeah. I have a contract. I believe when I get back, I will be able to earn my spot back. For the other side of the coin, for the me type of players who, I sneezed the wrong way and I got cut a dozen times, literally. You look at it and say, this is not a gift from the NFL. They are the most beautiful marketing machine in the world, because everything they do just smells like roses from them. Yeah. But you look at it and say, this is a cash advance on your contract. If you are Jed Collins and you are going to get cut in 2021, we can ask for that money back we loaned you last year. That is one of the facets of this discussion that nobody is really understanding. And I doubt it's being communicated or educated to the no-name guys.
It's not. And I think that, like, and no disrespect to any athlete or any professional athlete, but, the no-name guys, the filling guys, you have that pressure, because you never know when it's going to come again. So you're in that sense. It's like, if I play now, I might outplay my contract. But in the end, 2021 comes around, they can be like, oh, remember that cash advance we gave you? Yeah, we're going to need that back.
With interest, please.
And it's like, I spent that money to take care of my family and take care of some expenses. So it's really important, as you always allude to, that we need to make sure your financial team, financial experts, whoever you have in your corner, are really taking you through this whole process of understanding the implications at stake.
Yeah. And the other little tangent implication is that family aspect. Let's say my wife is more high risk. Let's say she's pregnant or we have kids. The caveat to it right now is we'll provide a Moby with a hotel room because he goes out on the field. Just stay away from your wife or your spouse or your family. It is just, again, you and I are so fascinated with this on the professional level, because you are being forced. We have, you and I, one of our slogans we've said for the last 10 years is, as an athlete, you have to be the CEO of your own business.
Hmm.
I now walk around with JCs all over me
I
because
like
I wrote, yeah, I'm trying, brother.
that.
But we look at it, and it is a decision at 21, 22 years old. You've just been drafted. Your dream just came to fruition, and you were being forced into this comprehension of like, well, how is this going to play out, not just in the next 2 weeks, which is the longest time frame you've ever really thought of things, but over the next 6 months, over a society, over the extension of my career. I think this is going to fast forward how much modern day athletes are going to need to be more business savvy.
Yeah, it's only the beginning. Obviously, no one could have prepared for this situation, but it's definitely a wake up call for future student athletes and professional athletes. Um,
So the last one I got to ask you is, going into a stadium, dead silent. I know we're pumping some noise and stuff like that in. What's the experience? Is that
for us, like we don't have fake noise or anything like that, so it's just like almost like a preseason game where no one's there. But then obviously once the game starts, you forget about everything because you're so locked into the game. But
yeah,
like, sometimes you get amped up and the crowd's there and whether it's home versus away, some certain crowds, certain audiences are more fun to play in. But well now it's like almost like an even playing field in a sense because you don't hear anything. So except a lot of players cussing and giving direct. Uh,
drown those out on the TV show? Yeah.
Exactly. So let's obviously this is bank shots. So we cover one main topic and then we like brush through some other topics. Athletes look into sports franchise ownership. Obviously, Kevin Garnett's inquiring about Minnesota Grizzlies, or sorry, Timberwolves, and then Patrick Mahomes just got into
The Royals.
the Royals. So where do you see that going? We just touched on it a little bit. I
So
personally think it's great to see athletes getting into the space. But just a reminder, not every athlete can do it. So,
no.
yeah.
And I look at it as, franchise in two fashions. The big ticket, I want to be a part owner of a professional sports franchise. I think that is incredible. One, because it is only the top 1% who are going to get an attempt to do that. But you look at the Magic Johnsons, Lakers, and the impact and influence you are able to have. And then I look at it as more of a caliber of player like myself, where I'm looking at franchising just a business. I think if players can look at a sports franchise and say, I believe my perspective will be valuable beyond anyone else's in that realm, and I have the funds to go and do so, I would encourage more professional athletes to become owners, if for no other reason than the majority of professional athletes are minorities, and we need more minority owners.
Hmm.
Um, I look at the current athletes saying, I want to go franchise a Jimmy John's or a business like that. I push back and say, wait until your career's done. Wait
Yeah.
until you kind of can get a little bit more knowledge and understanding around what it's going to take and how to be successful at it. But this is something that I'm sure you've been approached by, to be a part owner, partner, or franchise owner, because you have built such a good brand and are conscious of.
I don't got Patrick Mahomes money, but yeah, the opportunities have been there, but trying to figure out the right way is very interesting.
Do you think it's worthwhile for them to seek it out?
For the top athletes, yes, I think it's cool. Depending on how much say they're going to have within the cap table or the ownership group, not just to say it because it's cool, or not just to invest because it's cool, but like to actually have impact within the sports franchise that they want to help. I think it's really cool to see, and hopefully we're going to see more.
Mm,
But I don't think it's for everybody.
no,
Yeah,
because you're continuing down, and as you know, I mean, you've been traded, and I would assume cut here and there. Sports is risky, man.
yeah,
It's franchise. Everybody looks at like, oh, the Dallas Cowboys have gone nowhere but up, and it's like, yeah, but people have lost a lot of money in a lot of different realms. And just you look at this event we're going through, sports franchises are at least taking a look in the mirror and saying,
Yeah.
without 70, 80, 100,000 fans showing up every week, this is going to be a different model going forward. Now, TV contracts will produce, and what I love about being an entrepreneur now is I realize 5 businesses closed, 7 businesses open, so somebody's going to find a way to make money. But
That's true.
to double down on, my sport, my expertise, this is my profession, that will be a very interesting crossover, because you have to, no different than going to the media, you have to eliminate yourself from the locker room, which as an athlete, that's got to be a very tough challenge to say, I no longer have that emotional connection. I can view these players as pieces, not people.
Yeah. And then last story. I'm not sure if you saw, but Mookie Betts obviously signed a big contract with LA Dodgers. There's a good article on Sportico talking about the tax implications depending on where he resides in. So if he goes to Tennessee, obviously no state income tax, versus if he stays or he keeps his location in Massachusetts, which is like 5 to 6%, versus California, good old California, where it's 13.3% state income tax. So they're showing his contract. The graph, we're going to have it posted tomorrow, I hope. It's just amazing how much money he can retain or how much he can lose, just depending on where he lives.
And it's, again, that is where the humbling understanding and education comes in, is you live in one of the 7 states without an income tax, you can be significantly, more.
So that's why you're living in Seattle, huh?
That's why we moved up here. No income, babe. And you talk to Seahawks players who came from the Giants or the Chargers, and they're like, man, I get another game check for free. And like, as athletes, we have to go and pay in each state and city we play in. But
the Jocks tax, make sure you guys look it up.
It's crazy. But that reality of like our 8 home games now, I just pocketed 10%. That's a great come up. For him, it's going to be interesting because it is such a, he's not going to live any one place for a while. So it is like, how do you prove domicile? Like, how do you really say that? But I love that. And it's with the Patrick Mahomes deal. It's with these big dollars and numbers, it is very easy to start to look at why financial literacy, financial education is going to be significant. Is even with Patrick Mahomes or Bookie, it looks like so much money, and it is, but immediately half of it's gone. And then you look at just his lifetime, if he doesn't get it out of his estate, another half of it is gone. And so you look at, no matter if it's $500 million or $500, we all really need to start formulating a financial plan and educating ourselves.
No, that's what it's all about. And I definitely wanted to touch on that story because it shows another side of athletes. Like, they literally choose where they're going to play based on implications like this, with like tax implications and things like that. But now I want to touch on, so for bank shots, this is the first episode, so bear with us. We're usually going to keep it to 20, 25 minutes, but we definitely had to
the intro.
Yeah, we had to do the intro. We had to give you guys what this was all about. We're using Restream, so it's like on YouTube, Facebook, soon to be LinkedIn. It's on IG Live, but apparently the user face with IG is a little bit confusing, so we might have to take it off that moving forward. But yeah, so 3 stories. We dive into one deep topic, and then we touch on a money principle that you want to share or athlete of the week. So we decided to go athlete of the week this week. You want to talk about who we decided?
You go take it.
All right, perfect. So Kansas City Chiefs, Laurent Duvernay Tardif. He's also apparently like a surgeon, and he was probably the first football player to decide to opt out. He had a great quote. He talked about he would rather risk his life helping others instead of, tackling people on the field. So I think this ties back to what you talked about, leverage. I think for him to have leverage, have another career or another passion really plays a role into having a stress-free decision when it comes to, am I going to risk my life or if I'm going to play for pennies on the dollar? because I'm good financially or I'm good, moving on. So that's why we chose him as athlete of the week, and you take it home.
I think it just really exudes the idea of a modern day athlete, a young man who is choosing a purpose over a game he self-admittedly loves. Like, it's not like he wanted to opt out. This is something he felt called to do. And that's exactly what we want to discuss, diagnose, continue to get some headlines, and, obviously how it relates to business and financials. But brother, this is going to be the first of many. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Every Wednesday, for the people that is tuned in, every Wednesday, we'll try to keep it around the same time. We use Restream, so it's on both of our platforms. We'll switch off week to week until we talk to Restream, figure out a way to get it on multiple platforms at once. So make sure you follow at A Frugal Athlete. Make sure you follow at Jed Collins. Tell them your other channels too, because I know you got a couple other platforms.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're Instagram, Twitter, TikTok.
TikTok now too, huh?
TikTok's under Money Vehicle, so that's going to be financially driven and motivated. And then LinkedIn, man. LinkedIn's where I love to connect with people professionally. So check me out there. But yeah, man, this is going to be a good time, and I love bank shots. Like, this is going to be good. We're banking it.
Respect. All right. See you guys next week.